So hello there everyone, this is Phantom Duos here, and today I'm going to be doing part 1 of a new what if. This what if is going to be called What If Deku Had Reactive Adaptation. So the story will start at the beginning of the anime. Deku in the story will still be getting treated badly by everyone because of the fear towards Bakugo. But during this time, everything happening will go to present will be going to the present timeline in the anime at the beginning. Where we see Deku getting, instead of Bakugo being the one getting attacked by the sledge villain, it'll be Deku. Deku will be getting squished, getting his body taken by the sledge villain, as the sledge villain will say, "Come on, kid, let go of your body and give it to me." As Deku would just look at him and keep on resisting. But where we then see All Might couldn't do anything about it. He was in his time in his hero form was ran out. He used it all on something else, so it was impossible for him to help Deku. But then something appeared on Deku's head. As Deku looked up as he was on his last breath. The slush villain was getting onto his lungs, trying to stop him from breathing. As Deku saw this eight-handle wheel on top of him, as this eight-handle wheel spun right once. When it spun right once, Deku's eyes went red. Uh, Basically, the same image that you see on the screen is how Deku is right now. Deku's eyes went red. Red horns appear on both sides of his head. As he then as he then started as he then started glowing, his body just started healing from all the damage the sludge villain was doing. As he then started pulling the sludge villain out of his body. Little by little, everyone saw the sludge villain was coming out covered in blood as Deku was just pulling him out of his body, and his body was just healing. All the heroes that were there were just staring at Deku and wonder, what the hell is this kid doing? As a kid, as nobody ever expected a kid who shows to have no quirk to just be pulling out a villain out of his body like that. As Deku then fully took the sludge villain out of his body, and his jaw that was being pulled apart by the sludge villain went back to normal. As he then looked at the sludge villain and smiled. Nobody could see Deku's eyes, they were just glowing red. As Deku then smiled evilly and squished the sludge villain into a round ball the size of a baseball. As he then said two words, "Go to hell." And he smashed the sludge villain into the concrete floor that he was on, making a crater appear because of the sludge villain knocking him out. As Deku then stared at all the people that were there. When Deku stared at them, he made everyone see that his eyes weren't there. All they saw was pure red, an evil aura of red glowing out of his eyes, and horns around him. As he then got knocked out, he fell down, making his eyes appear and the horns disappear. As the red glow disappeared as well, and the halo was gone. Where every hero rushed to check on Deku, and the others went to grab the round ball slush villain, who was knocked down on the floor and out of shape because of how strong Deku was in that moment. The slush villain wasn't gonna be able to get his shape back. Where we then see Mount Lady and Kamui Woods looked at each other as Mount Lady said, "Who is that kid and what powers does he have to just drag something out of his body?" Kamui Woods then spoke, I don't know, but the kid sure has a powerful quirk to do this and heal himself. But he also looks like his quirk is evil." As Deku was then taken to the hospital. Where we then see the news showing videos across the world of what happened to Deku, and where everyone saw the wheel and the handle spin right, and Deku suddenly turning into a red-eye person with dark red horns, and healing himself instantly and beating a villain, but then getting knocked out, but then falling unconscious. But as Bakugo saw this, he then spoke. What the hell? That quirkless nerd had a quirk all alone and I didn't know? I'm gonna kill him. As we then see Inko, who saw this news, she was at the hospitals in the blink of an eye because Deku, even though he was 13 or 14-year-old this time, was still her baby. Where we then see Inko arrive at the hospital. But before we see this, we see the wheel, the 8-handle wheel appear again on top of Deku's head and stay there. As the doctor and nurses saw this and wonder, what exactly is this doing on Deku's head? Where Inko then came and found her little Izuku laying on the hospital bed, unconscious. Where she spotted the wheel on top of Deku's head, but when she tried to touch it, it would let her hand go through it. But then the doctor would say, Mrs. Midoriya, your son is kind of developed his quirk when coming into contact with death. As he saw in the news, he almost died, but because of his quirk, his body instantly healed. When Inko heard her son almost died, she dropped down in tears, but she stopped for a little when the doctor said his quirk wasn't going to let him die. Inko then asked, how in the world is a quirk not going to let you die? As the doctor said, well, his quirk has 8 handles, which, as we can see on top of his head, the 8 handles probably stand for eight religious things, because as some good quirk people could see, they also show. Sorry, Miss Midoriya, I can't think. Let me say this better. I brought quirk doctors into the hospital to read the wheel, and the wheel had religious spins, and as they got from reading the wheel, it said that whenever it spun right, the wheel was do something considered to life, I believe, or adaptation. That's what we got from reading his quirk. And then Inko understand adaptation, so he adapted to death. As the doctor then noticed, yes, your son cannot be harmed. Your son cannot be harmed by death, nor can it be attacked. As Inko then looked at the doctor and said, "What do you mean cannot be harmed by death? Even if he tried to die, he isn't going to be harmed or anything." As Deku then said, not Deku, as Inko then said, so my son can't die, but he can get old, right? As the doctor then looked at her and said, I'm sorry, Miss Midoriya, but I don't have that information. We just have to see what happens to her now. But then Inko said, why is he still unconscious then? Then the doctor said, well, I believe the quirk is doing some changes to his body, said the doctor, looking at Deku, whose body was growing while unconscious. But then we skipped 1 week. During this 1 week time, Deku's body has changed a lot during his time unconscious. Deku grew inches and gained muscle during this time, as Deku grew to be 6'1" from the changes of his quirk. But then during the last week, before anyone was told if they got accepted to UA, he woke up. But when he woke up, this happened. The doctor called Inko and released Deku from the hospital, as the doctor knew that his mother might want her son back instantly. So it would be better to just release him. Inko was shocked but was happy about her son still being alive. But then Deku spent a week going to school after coming home. As everything in the anime went normal, but Bakugo and everyone else stayed away from this new Deku, as all he did was stay quiet in school and would disappear after school ended. This would happen a lot because Deku wasn't used to the powers he had after years of being quirkless. As Deku thought, maybe with this power I won't be alone anymore, trying to get a smile on his face, but he remembered everyone truly didn't want him or want anything to do with him. The only one that wanted something to do with him was his mother. But where Deku grew to be the biggest loner in his school, where we then see where we then hear the teachers. This is present time. This is the actual present time of the anime, where we then hear the teachers saying who's going to UA and where everything here went to the anime for Bakugo. But when it got to Deku, all he did was nod and got up and left the building, as it was already time for everyone to go home. Then we see Deku getting surrounded by Bakugo and his goons. Bakugo spoke, you freak. Tell me, how in the world did you become like this? My quirk did this to me. Sorry to say it, Bakugo. Spoke Deku, as Deku then said, let's see if you understand this. You will look into the faces of passers-by, hoping for something that will bring someone to you, even though I am all alone. Spoke Deku. What are you saying, you freak? Said Bakugo. Just then Deku disappeared from their face and reappeared behind them, walking away, as none of them chased him because of his power that is always being hidden away. Then we see Deku talking to his mother about being accepted into UA and not wanting to go to school for the last 10 months for him to train, as she agreed and let him be. But then we skip a month. Deku had a lot happen, from traveling to the mountains because of a dream, but also during this, oh my god, someone got someone to give his quirk to, and that was no other than Bakugo. Yes, I want someone powerful to have one for all, and the only powerful person that I knew that wasn't Deku was Bakugo, so I might as well give it to him. And besides, I'm making Deku strong enough to get rid of one for all on his own. As all my god, nah, I can't read to. Bakugo caught All Might's eyes and everything normal, just like Deku had to do when getting the quirk. Yeah, so basically, Deku and Bakugo went through the same training as in the anime. As Deku had to go, Bakugo went through it. Bakugo went through normal phases of one for all and everything, but then during this time, Bakugo has gotten at least 10% of one for all because of him being battle smart. Yes, I'm gonna give that to Bakugo. But then we have a flashback to a night where Deku woke up in cold sweat, shocked from the dream he had of a giant monster with wings for eyes pointing at a mountain 3 to 4 hours away from the city. As the monster then suddenly looked like Deku and said, "Find me there," in a very deep voice. As Deku left for the 10 months to train at that mountain, as we go to present time, where we then see Deku climbing the mountain as his driver couldn't bring him up there. Yes, this driver that Deku got was one of his mother's friend who had a quirk to transform vehicles into planes, but he couldn't do it. As Deku, who was halfway up the mountain, looked down and said, "Well, at least I know my quirk won't let me die, or maybe that was a one-time thing." Well, let's not find out. And yes, because of Deku being unconscious for that long time, his quirk has done some changes to his look. Deku now looks like the picture on the screen. He has longer hair, and he's kind of a bit more pale than he was in the anime. But then the more he climbed, the wheel floating on his head would spin left, bringing back his stamina, and one more time left, healing his body instantly. Because yes, as we all know, if you climb a mountain with no protection on your hands, you'll start bleeding, or start bleeding from a lot of freaking rocks damaging your hand, from how much climbing and cuts his body had to endure. But then after 2 hours, Deku reached the top of the mountain. Deku basically has been gone from his house for at least 2 weeks. And Ninko wasn't worried because she knew her son was strong enough to make it. But when he looked, everything was foggy. But when it cleared, a little giant rock came flying at him, And yes, when I mean a little giant rock, I mean a rock the size of a freaking barn. As Deku As Deku looked at the rock and put his hand on his pockets and said, I hope my body can endure this. Hey, where out of nowhere, Deku forced the wheel to spin as his eyes went blank. His eyes went blank. It started glowing red. Red horns appeared, and a red aura came. As where then out of nowhere, Deku had wings on his arms. On his arms appear. On the sides of his arms appear. Where he stood there and took the hit like nothing. But then Deku's body went back to normal. As he looked, there was a giant monster with wings as eyes appear, but it then disappeared, and a man with white skin, pale eyes, and wings on the side of his arms started walking towards Deku. As he clapped all the way to him and say, I never thought a human would be able to learn how to use the wheel. Deku then stared dumbly at the thing walking towards him as he said, Alright, I must be dreaming. A person who looks a little like me when I'm transformed because of the wheel. Once I'm forced to control the wheel is talking to me. I can't even do that, but you can, said Deku. As the monster then said, well, I'm not human, as he kept on looking at Deku up and down, walking around him, but you're not fully human either, so you're half human, half Shinigami. I'm surprised you have any control over that wheel of yours. Where out of nowhere, he grabbed Deku's wheel and said, let's see what you can do with the little of adapting you have done with this wheel. As Deku then started tapping the top of his head. Huh? How the hell? How did you grab my wheel? As Deku said that to the monster. As the monster said, you don't know that you're able to grab it. As Deku said, no. Even I knew that it's impossible to grab a wheel like this. As Deku then said that to the monster. As the monster then looked at Deku and just said, just fight me. Where Deku then moved the wheel right 2 times. Wait, no. Where the monster then turned the wheel right 2 times, turning Deku into the Shinigami form, which the Shinigami form is on the screen right now. Deku then, as we then see Deku fight, running towards the monster without no problem. His mind was still clear, but his vision was just red, but he could see clearly through it. As Deku then suddenly swing this arm right and it summoned a spear. As Deku then said, I can summon weapons now. As he then made a freaking spear out of his hand and started running towards the monster. As the monster then dodged. Good. At least you can fight. As the monster kept on dancing. Alright. You have no swordsmanship. That's fine. I can train you. As Deku then said, As Deku then told the spear to disappear and he started fighting hand to hand. As Deku then said, I've been training hand to hand combat because of my mom, so let's see if you can handle it. As yes, Inko has forced Deku to learn multi MMA, boxing, karate, everything you can imagine. Inko forced Deku to learn under the month of him wanting to disappear before going to the mountains. And yes, because of his adaptation quirk, he learned them quicker. Like under 2 weeks, he learned multi and MMA. Boxing he learned in 2 days, and everything else he learned in like the last 2 weeks of the month before he came to the mountain. As Deku then rushed straight at this monster, and this monster we're gonna call him, let's call him M. M's real name will not be told until a certain point in this what if. As M looked at Deku and saw, you're better at hand-to-hand combat because of adaptation. As Deku then said, yes, thanks to this adaptation quirk of mine, I have better hand-to-hand combat than most people. As M looked at Deku and just said, alright, as M then fully turned back into his monster form and spoke. "Let's see you try me on this." As Deku then said, "How the f am I meant to fight you?" As this, as the monster then said, "You don't know. You may be able to." As the monster then said, "You don't know. You may be able to damage me." As Deku then looked and said, "What's your name before I fight you?" He said, "M. You don't need to know my name until a certain something happens." As Deku said, "Okay, I understand." Then Deku rushed at him at full speed. Yes, Deku's speed is so much faster than most people. Basically, Deku is faster than All Might. At his prime, he's faster than almost every. Deku's basically faster than almost everybody who has a speed quirk. And also one for all. He's basically more faster than 100% of one for all. As Deku then looked at him and said, "I'm already in front of you." As M laughed and said, "I saw you coming before you did." As Deku then said, "Huh?" M then flicked Deku on the head, sending him flying into a boulder that was in the mountain. As then Deku broke through the boulder, but then M saw that Deku was gonna fall off because of the flick. Deku was thinking of what to do and not thinking of where he's gonna go out if he falls off the mountain. But M would appear behind him and catching him. As he said, "You need to focus more on your surroundings than what you need to do to defeat me." As Deku then kicked M out of the mountain, sending him falling down. As Deku and M were fighting in the air while falling hundreds, and when I mean hundreds of meters, down to the floor. As they were really getting close to the floor. As Deku then said, let's see what you can do fighting in the air." As M then said, "You forgot." As M started floating, "I'm not human." As Deku then said, "This is so annoying." But then out of nowhere, Deku got punched into the mountain as his body left the crater shape of a human. As Deku then said, as Deku, who was unconscious for 2 seconds in his mind, we see Deku's mind. The wheel would randomly appear and it would start talking. As the wheel that Maharaga had in his hand would come back to Deku, as Deku out of nowhere would grow into the same being as. Did I say Maharaga? As M, the same being as M. As M was then see, finally this kid fully aware. As M then said, "Oh no, this kid does not know how to control it." When Deku did this, boom. M would see another version of himself in front of him. But this time it was red with red horns, and the wings for eyes were red this time. As Deku then smiled as he said, this was not Deku talking. This was just Deku's anger and thoughts of loss talking for him. As he said, "I'm not losing to you." As those were the only words he said before having a big smile on his face. As he then grabbed M by the head, sending him back up to the mountains. As the wheel was bright red instead of being its normal gold. It was bright red as Deku's red aura was still there. As he then grabbed the red aura and made it into a spear. As he then threw it straight at M. As M then said, "Holy grandma, holy heck, what am I supposed to do now?" Psych. As M appeared right behind Deku and said, good thing, I finally learned that you have a bit more differences than me when I first got this, or when I first came into this world." As M knocked Deku out by hitting him on the head and putting him on his shoulders. Because of this, Deku's wheel turned gold, went back to gold, and Deku was back to his human form. As Deku's shirt was broken, as he then said, you grew to be at least the same height as me, which is 12 feet. So I at least know that you basically inherited my powers, Izuku Midoriya." As M took Deku back to the mountains, as M then woke. This is basically where we're gonna see M throw water on Deku's head from a freaking lake that is on the mountain. And to say this mountain is basically the Himalayas, the Himalaya mountain. Yeah, Deku basically traveled to the Himalaya mountains and was dragged to another side of the Himalaya mountains that basically had waterfalls, was clear, had no snow, no anything. And yes, if you guys are wondering, is this monster a Yeti or something? No, he's not a Yeti. He's a Shinigami, as I said. Then Deku would then look at the. Deku would then be would wake up in covered in water, as he said. Was that necessary? As the Shin SM would be back to his human form, as he said, yeah, it was kind of necessary and not necessary. I just wanted to wake you up quick because I needed to tell you two things. First, as I saw from your power, you're not human anymore because you experienced death. And as you know, your adaptation doesn't. If you experience death, you're not considered human anymore. As Deku says, so I'm not human. I'm fully Shinigami. No, you're still 25% human. So you're gonna grow. You're gonna grow old to the point where you're gonna stop growing at 19 years old. As Deku then said, huh. At 19 years old, I'm gonna stop growing old. As M then say, yeah, that's the thing. I did not expect for you to experience death. I was just expecting for you to gain the wheel during something bad to happen. But death was the only thing that death called you too early. So yeah. As Deku then said, wait a minute. You expected me to gain the wheel from bad experiences, as Deku said that. Then M's nodded, saying, "Yeah, I expected you to gain the wheels from a bad experience, not death. But now that you experience death, you're basically 75%, 75%. No, I'm doing the wrong math. Yeah, it's 75% human, 25%. No, 75% Shinigami, 25% human." And guys, in the comments, if I'm doing the math wrong, I will appreciate if somebody tells me the correct math. But then Deku nodded, saying, "Huh, no wonder everybody's scared of me. And I'm taller than most of the people in my class, so yeah, understandable." But Deku started yawning and saying, "Is there a place where I can sleep?" Then Maharaga said, "Sleep anywhere. We're in the mountains." As Deku then said, "Huh, alright, is there a tree anywhere?" As not Maharag. As M then said, there's trees that way. And Kay, you know you're in the Himalaya mountains, right?" As M looked at Deku and Deku said, "I'm in the wait, what? So me climbing that mountain, this is not a random mountain." As M then said, "Yeah, it's not a random mountain." As Deku nodded and said, "Alright, I am going crazy." As M just started laughing, "Well, kid, in the morning we're gonna start training your powers. You need to learn how to control them before you freaking go insane on somebody and everybody sees a freaking 12 feet monster annihilating an entire building." As Deku then said, "Huh? That would actually happen to me?" As M then looked at Deku and said, "Huh? You never know." And the only reason I'm talking to you, kid, is because I'm in my human form. In my other form, I could only say a couple of words before I can't say anything else. As Deku then nodded. Then we skip towards the morning. Deku would be woken up by water again. As M would then look at Deku and say, "Let's start your training, kid. First thing we're gonna need to teach you is you are a Shinigami, aka human, who is basically able to be summoned by people. But since you're not fully Shinigami, you're half. You're not supposed to be summoned by anybody. You're just you. You're just a human with the powers of a Shinigami." As Deku then nodded, understanding why he's talking. As he then asked, "So what are the powers of being a Shinigami?" As Deku then said, "Huh, control over death, automatic control over death. I don't know what they call this. Adaptation. What you call adaptation is for me is just a balance in life, but the balance in life doesn't apply to me because I am the balance in life is nowhere connected to me because I break the balance in life. As Deku then says, so I am also I'm basically a broken. Me and you are not supposed to be in this world because we break the balance of life. As Deku understood that and said, huh, the balance of life is broken because of us. As M then nodded saying, yep, it's gonna keep on being like that until we decide to go back to the Shinigami realm, which is you're never gonna go back, it's only me. As Deku then said, alright. So when are you going back then? As M then said, in 10 months. 10 months I basically came back to this planet or this realm just to train you on how to control your power so you don't kill anybody. As Deku then said, alrighty, so I got 10 months to train and we're doing this every day. As Deku looked at M and M said, yeah, so let's start now. So we skipped the 10 months. 10 months have passed and Deku has been trained on everything from basic Shinigami powers to basic adaptation rules to almost everything from the super strength on how to control the forms, on how to control your rage, and on how to also be careful on using the full form of the Shinigami. As Deku then said thank you to M, as M also told Deku, alright kid, my name is blank. And Deku also I know the name of the character, but you guys won't know the name of the character until the next part. Yeah, the next part will be, I'll say the name of the character. Deku said, okay, blank, thank you for training me and everything. Now, am I allowed to transform into the full Shinigami form just to fly back to my house? As M then said, yeah. As M then started walking away back into the fog, as the mountain started getting foggy again, Deku looked back and said, well, I see you again, man. As M said, huh, you probably will. But until then, make sure to not lose. As M fully disappeared in the fog, going back into the Shinigami realm. As Deku then looked at the mountain and said, huh, it was a good 10 months here. Over these 10 months, Deku's body has fully matured into a muscular build, and he's the same age as in the anime. He hasn't grown up on anything, but he also has the same clothing as you see in the screen. He's wearing that same clothing because it was a gift from M. As Deku looked back and saw that M fully disappear, as Deku then said, time to leave, I guess. As he then transformed into his full Shinigami form and jumped off the mountain and started flying back home. But before he got home, he landed on the roof of this house and turned back into human and went to his door. As his door, he knocked. His mother was there. As the next day was his UA entrance exam. As his mom said, who is it? As she heard, hi mom, I'm back. Sorry I've been gone for 10 months. As she opened the door instantly and started hugging her son. As Bakugo's mom was there too, as she saw Deku was here. As he then says, so Deku, how was your 10 months of training on that mountain? As Deku then said, it was fine, I guess. I didn't have to deal with people for 10 months. As he was yawning when saying it. And I didn't really sleep on anything. I just slept on freaking trees, I think. As Deku also remembers sleeping on water. Yes, Deku can float on water without sinking. As Deku then said, I think water is more comfortable to sleep on than trees. As Inko and Bakugo's mother looked at Deku and they said, alright, you're crazy. You're crazy. So your quirk allows you to sleep on water? As Deku then say, yes. It allows me to sleep on water. Then Inko says, so you're telling me you have the ability to randomly do everything you want? It's because of the adaptations, the adaptation quirk of mine. So, Mom, you know that UA Engine's exam is tomorrow, right? As his mom, as Inko looked at Deku and said, "Yeah, so you're gonna eat something or you're gonna go to sleep." Deku got to his house at like 11 of the night. No, I want to make it earlier, 10. Then Deku said, "I'm gonna eat something." As Deku to spend the last 2 hours talking to his mother and talking to Bakugo's mom, as they were both shocked about what he did and who he was with during those 10 months. As they asked, "Is M really real?" As Deku said, "Yeah, but he's not gonna be back for a while. So yeah, he trained me for on everything he could do." So then it was time for Deku to go to sleep. As Deku went to bed. So this is where I'm gonna be leaving it off. Thank you guys for watching. This is Friend to Do Us here. Next part of this What If will be released on next week on a Friday or Saturday. So thank you guys for watching. This is Friend to Do Us here, and goodbye.